have searched many years on end. There was none that my soul could depend. My soul cries out for your presence in here. This very hour, for your presence in here. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the peace I seek. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the joy I seek. I have searched many years on end. There was none that my soul could depend. My soul cries out for your presence in here. This very hour, for your presence in here. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the peace I seek. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the joy I seek. In your presence I am free from the chain that has bound me. In your presence I am calm, waiting for the kingdom come. In your presence I am free from the chain that has bound me. In your presence I am calm, waiting for the kingdom come. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the peace I seek. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the joy I seek.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Danielle Devine, and this is
Josh Hardesty.
And we are live from the house for our Real Talk, Real Faith series, where we talk about real issues in Christianity And tonight we have an incredible, something a little new. We have a panel coming up after we hear Josh's story, which is amazing. We have a panel coming up on adopted sonship and what it means to be an adopted son, because Steve had such an amazing teaching on Wednesday about Joseph being Jesus' adopted father. We're going to play off that and actually have a panel of some people that have really taken to heart that message of adopted sonship. But first of all, we're going to have Josh Hardesty, this good-looking guy to my right.
Stop it.
Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Best I've ever been.
Yeah. How is there anybody you want to say hi to?
Hi, Mom and Dad. Of course, gotta get that one out of the way. And
Yeah.
then Paige, Aaron, Micah, Silas. I love you guys. Miss you guys. Wish I was up there. See you guys soon, hopefully.
So Josh, you came through Life Recovery Ministries.
Yes, ma'am.
Which is our 12-month recovery, residential recovery program. But you don't look like you were a drug addict.
That was one of my biggest problems, actually.
Wasn't you just kind of manipulated and got your
Yeah.
way?
I have a ability to look like everything's okay on the outside.
Yeah, while you're struggling on the inside.
Yes.
So it's super fascinating. Like, people would look at you and not think that, as a kid, that you really had any issues. But you were telling me that, bullying was actually a big part of your story.
Yeah.
So you tell us about your childhood and that?
Yeah. Growing up, I was one of the smaller frame guys, and so for me to be around all the other guys that were growing up faster than I was, getting bigger than I was, it was
Yeah.
kind of like I was an easy target.
Yeah.
And so like just going to school on a constant basis there was always a joke about it, or somebody bullying me or
Yeah.
pushing me around. And
And you were a skater guy.
I was a skater guy. I had long hair and
Could
everything.
you do tricks and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what
Yeah.
what was your best skateboard trick?
360 flip?
Wow. Could you
Yeah.
still do that?
Probably not. I'd break a hip.
Wow. I'd want to see it though.
Well,
do you
we
guys
can
want to
try it.
see it? We got to film this guy doing some skateboarding tricks.
Yeah, that could be an injury.
So childhood, you're bullied, you're a little bit undersized,
Yeah.
skinny, just really probably learned to not love yourself very well.
Yeah.
So you get to high school and you start to get some acceptance. And tell us about that.
Yeah, for some odd reason, I have the gift of being able to make my way into a large variety of groups.
Yeah.
Wherever I go.
You're like a chameleon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the ways that I was able to protect myself and really kind of blend in and not get pinpointed so much.
Yeah.
And so I was able to make friends with a lot of the bigger guys that were on the football team.
Yeah, the seniors, right?
The seniors. I was the little brother.
Yeah.
And so that they did the big brother, little brother thing where they would protect me and take me out, and
Take you out to what?
we'd end up going to parties.
Yeah. So you started drinking beer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your senior year? What year did you
I
start
think
drinking?
it was towards the end of my senior year. Prior to that, I was kind of like nervous, didn't want to,
Yeah.
I don't want to go into the party drugs or do any of that
And
stuff.
we know your mom, Sheila.
Oh, yes.
And she probably would have been a little scary to come home.
She's Mama Bear. I love her for it.
She's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, I understand. Like, you wouldn't want to, get in trouble for that.
Yeah, definitely not.
So when you came to us, you were addicted to painkillers.
Yes.
So how do you go from drinking, at parties to painkillers? And how old were you when you came to us?
I was 26.
So in that 8 years time, what happened in that 8 years that caused you to turn towards painkillers?
It was a pretty fast downhill slope in the spectrum of things.
Yeah.
Right out of high school, I started working. Didn't go to college or anything like
Yeah.
that. And so it was just, I never took a liking to school or didn't feel like I was very good at it.
Yeah.
And so
But the truth is, I know you. You're very smart.
I am smart.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I'm working on with the whole self-hate thing.
Yeah.
So, so work was really easy for me. I can
Yeah.
perform and I can do my job. And,
Yeah.
And so I started working at Les Schwab in the tire center, working on semi-trucks.
Okay,
Not doing
fascinating.
proper lifting.
Yeah.
Ended up hurting my back. And so when I would drink, the pain would go away.
Yeah.
And so I was able to work longer. But that eventually kind of fizzled out. You can't really drink at work and do
Yeah.
your job.
Yeah.
And so I'd save that for the weekends. And a couple of my friends introduced me to painkillers. And that I found
It's a very expensive addiction.
It's a very expensive addiction.
And you could work longer,
Yeah,
and your back wouldn't hurt. But that was a very slippery slope for you.
it was.
Yeah.
And I found out that when I started taking the painkillers, not only did it numb the pain that I had in my back or my body, but it also numbed the pain that I had from past hurts and
Your emotional pain.
My emotional pain, yeah.
So we know with working with drug addiction and even alcohol just addiction,
Yeah.
that usually there's a comfort, a self-comfort there, there's always a reason why someone becomes a drug addict.
Yeah.
And for you, what would you think was the reason that was causing you to want to numb, causing you not to want to feel, causing all that? Why did you do that?
Hands down, it was my self-hate.
Yeah, you just hated yourself?
Mm-hmm. I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't like the way I talked. I didn't like the way I was put together, you know. And
Really?
It was just a constant thing of when I looked in the mirror, I hated the person I saw.
Which is crazy because, you know, I love you a lot. You're
Mm-hmm.
like a little brother to me. And when it comes to personalities, you got one of the best. When it comes to, you know, when it comes to, you know, just looks, you look great. You know, you're very handsome.
Thank you.
And so it's crazy that, you know, I think all of us struggle with self-hate.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that bullying when you were a kid was so, like, such a deep wound that you never dealt with.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I never really talked about. I mean, I've talked about it maybe a couple of times with my parents, but other than that, I found it as like a weakness for me to go and be like, help me.
Yeah.
You know?
And for a little boy to be bullied and told he's small and weak, I mean, that really just must have just been really hard for you.
Yeah, it was rough.
So, so you come to the Father's house.
Yeah.
Your mom and dad send you down here. And how long were you in the Life Recovery Ministries?
Well, it's a 12-month ministry, but I got the privilege to stay longer.
Yeah, how much longer, Josh?
I did probably about 18 months
Yeah.
in LRM. And so
what was the real turning point for you where, like, you know, because you struggled when you first got in here with being a little bit of a know-it-all and having it all figured out. So what was the real turning point for you to change?
I honestly think it all came down to a choice.
Yeah.
And it just got to the point where I wasn't participating in what we were doing here.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do what we did here, but I wanted to make it look like I wanted to be here.
It was more about what it looked like than what you was
Exactly.
inside. Okay.
Yeah, and so it finally came down to a point where I sat down with Steve, your dad, and he told me straight up, I love you enough to let you go do your own thing, but you're not going to do it here. You know, and so...
Because he always saw you. You thought
Yes.
you were fooling him.
I did.
And you recognized that you weren't.
No, not at all. He was on me day one.
Yeah, he
You know,
was.
and so it was just what clicked for me was that I affected more people than just myself.
Really?
Because in your addiction, it's all about, well, it's not hurting you guys, it's just hurting me.
Yeah.
I don't know why you guys have a problem with it. I'm just hurting myself.
Yeah.
And when he said that, for some reason, I don't know why it didn't click sooner, but it clicked that, oh, I'm actually affecting you. I'm
Yeah.
affecting my family.
Yeah.
I'm affecting my leaders around me and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And so it just, something finally snapped in me, and I ended up breaking down and getting super emotional. And
Which was very pivotal for you because you
Yes.
had been, for lack of a better word, non-emotional for quite some time.
super blocked off.
Yeah.
I shut it off for a long time.
And that's still something that you're working on and
Yeah.
progressing, right? But it takes time.
It does.
It does. So you were seen, you know, really seen by Steve. That was
Yeah.
and you know, you did put your family through the ringer.
I did.
And that's been a journey too, like
Yeah.
getting their forgiveness and trust in their trust.
Yeah, and I mean, even through the program, I wasn't not allowed to talk to him, but
Yeah.
when I would get in trouble, that was one of my punishments because it just constantly kept hurting them, you
Yeah.
know, and so I was doing it to protect them.
Yeah.
And it ended up actually getting us to a better place.
That's good.
Like I put them through the ringer, and for them to be where we're at today, where we're able to have a relationship and actually be able to communicate and talk about our feelings
Yeah.
has been monumental in
you.
our relationship and for me.
Yeah, like it's
personally.
just amazing how your family's really let you back in, like trusting and
Yeah.
you know, even after all the stuff you did.
And I think that was like one of the main things that kind of drove me throughout LRM is I actually had a strong support system.
Yeah.
You know, which I was very beneficial for.
Yeah.
They were able to, when Steve told them to lay off, they were able to lay off, and they really got me to where I'm at today.
That's so good. And where are you today? Tell us about Josh Hardesty, 2020. Where are you? You know, you haven't arrived,
I have not.
but
I
you're
am
well on
very
your
far
way in
from
this
arriving.
journey.
Very far.
very far from arriving. He is single, by the way,
Oh, very friends.
but not desperate.
Not at all.
So who is Josh Hardesty now? Tell me about
I'm actually somebody that could be trusted.
Yeah.
And I could be followed, and I know where I'm going.
Yeah.
I actually lead one of the houses in LRM.
Wow. So you're
I
a
know-
house leader helping people out of addiction.
I am. I'm able to show them that there's nothing special about me. You know, I was where they were, and they can be where I'm at.
Yeah.
It's just all about saying yes and being real. And I think that was one of the hardest things for me was being real.
Who was instrumental in this process for you? Is there anyone you want to
Yeah,
say?
Nick Zeppi, hands down, was with me through thick and thin, saw me at my best and saw me at my worst, and he believed in me when nobody else did.
So good.
You know, you, hands down, have always been able to tell me the hard stuff, even when I don't feel like hearing it.
I did not think he was going to say that, by the way.
It's
I wouldn't have asked the question.
That's honestly like the things I need.
Yeah.
Steve and Vicky,
Yeah.
Derek, you know, everybody willing to be able to tell me that this isn't going to end well for you.
Yeah, and you've had lots of hard conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you needed them.
I did.
It's good.
And it was one of the things that helped me out the most was just being able to hear you're going the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's so good, Josh. Well, we are coming up next. We have a panel, like I said, on Sonship. Josh, that was awesome. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for your time.
So we're going to go to a commercial right now about our podcast, and then you're going to see me. I'm going to go quickly over to the table, and I'm going to lead a panel. It's going to be so fun. Great personalities on the panel on adopted sonship. So stay tuned.
We just got done recording another episode of the podcast, The Uncommon Truth.
It's a weekly podcast where we talk about Christianity the way Jesus intended it to be.
Here's a clip of one of our shows.
So church is really supposed to be a place where we come to give our life away. It isn't to receive, but receiving is the promise of God. So the giving comes from God. The church is the place where you give, and God gives the return, and it's abundant.
You know, it's really good what he said. And for me, it's like, I think most people think that church is about them.
Yeah.
And I think even Francis Chan, his thing was, why would I, you know, it's like I'm going to church, and this guy is going to bless me for 30 minutes, and it's going to be all about me. It's one guy blessing, 500 people, 200 people, and it's a wrong idea. It's not one guy blessing 500 people. It's one guy speaking from the Lord, telling you who you are. Now go do it. It should be every person's. And I agree with Steve. It's like you have the wrong impression of what Christianity. It's not about you. It's about Jesus. It's about going and giving your life away. But so often we just go to church on Sunday and it's all about feeling good, bless me, what do I get? But it's that, and then it's give it away.
If you'd like to subscribe, visit changeorville.org and click on podcasts. We're also available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you can get podcasts. So go ahead and subscribe, leave us a rating or a review so more people can find our show.
You'll actually hear practical examples and testimonies of how to follow Jesus in day-to-day life.
It literally will change your life. Check it out.
What's up, guys? I'm back. You just had me with Josh and got to see that podcast commercial, and they were actually around the same table. But
Awesome.
I'm so excited. This is my first panel. We wanted to switch things up a little bit. And as you can see, Derek and I are a little closer, and Lisa and I are 6 feet apart. We have our tape measure, so we've done that. I know, I'm all types of cornball, but I just wanted to make sure to quell any, tension or nervousness out there. I wanted to make sure we told them.
Yep.
There you go.
Anyways, I'm here with Lisa Bowers and Derek Devine, and tonight we are going to be talking about adopted sonship. So on Wednesday night, we really went over with Steve. Steve really preached about Joseph, the father of Jesus, really being Jesus's adopted father. He wasn't Jesus' biological father, but how Jesus really needed Joseph in his life, and how God designed that from the beginning, and in the same way, how we need adopted spiritual fathers. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. A light topic, of course.
Yeah, keeping it light. Saturday night.
But I picked you two. We were supposed to have a third, but we didn't want to get too close to each other. But I picked you two because you probably both have been going through this some of the longest in our whole church. I know, Lisa, you came to the Father's house 19 years ago.
Yep.
You were 19.
I was
Wow.
just had turned 20.
Wow.
And so it'll be 19 years this fall. Crazy.
Yeah, and so she was so much an adopted son and daughter of my mom and dad that she actually slept in my room on my
true.
bed. She took my bed.
I stole her room.
No
stole her
animosity
bed.
there.
She's still dealing with it, going through her healing. We're working on it.
Yeah, I was like 13 or 12 or something. I had issues. Anyways, Mom, don't comment on that. And then Derek, of course, was more in a forced sonship situation coming to the father's house. Though he used to tell me 3 things all the time. Do you remember that when we first got married? Do you remember those 3 things?
You never let me forget.
I will never let you forget. Why don't you tell them, because they've probably never heard of it.
She knows them more than I do, but they were to never live in Orville.
Nope. Go ahead.
I know. To never work at the church.
Nope.
And
Family.
never work for family.
Yes, and
Yeah.
here we are working at the church in Orville for family.
All 3 of them. Don't ever say that.
God is good.
Learn your lesson from
But no,
me.
like
Never.
the real turning point for you in your Christianity, you were always a really strong believer, really black and white, amazing character.
Yeah.
It's what kind of hooked me from the beginning. But the real turning point, I think, in your Christianity was when we moved in with my parents. The second year of our marriage,
Yeah.
and God and my dad really discipled you. So that's why I want to talk to these 2 today,
good.
because this adopted sonship topic is such a hard one, and especially if you weren't raised understanding that sonship's a good thing. So Lisa, let's start with you.
Yeah.
Bring us back to 19 years ago.
Yep.
That landscape for you, and
Yeah.
the moment you chose sonship.
Yeah.
Well, for us, it's
I
daughtership,
remember.
but that's kind of
Right.
weird.
Yeah, it is. It's a weird daughtership.
Daughtership word.
Yes. So I actually remember it.
Yeah.
I remember being in a worship service on a Wednesday night.
How long had
and
you been here at that time?
Probably less than a year. 'Cause I
Okay.
was still living up at your parents' house.
Okay.
So probably between a 6-month, 8-month mark.
Yeah.
And I was just by nature and by the hurts in my life, and really, realistically, it's perceived hurts in my life. Our parents did great jobs.
Yeah.
But as a kid, you perceive things that
Yeah.
maybe aren't true or are true.
Yeah.
And so, in my perceived orphanness,
Yeah.
per se, I really had a hard time understanding this whole being a daughter.
Yeah.
And so I remember I was
I
having a
had
hard
great
time.
parents, and I had a hard time understanding.
Right? It's
So-
a tricky thing.
And you had good parents as well.
I did. I
Yeah.
had wonderful parents, and
Yeah.
they have loved me to life, and
Yeah.
it's been awesome. And so, but for me, having somebody in the spiritual aspect of parenting
Yeah.
was new.
Yep.
And so I didn't know how to do that. So I remember being in a worship service, and I just was sitting there. I was going through something in inner healing, and I just sat down in worship, and I let my stuff just be with me.
Yeah.
And your dad called me out
What
on
do you
it.
mean by stuff?
All of my insecurities,
Baggage.
all of my baggage,
Baggage.
all of my, I was wearing the backpack of rocks.
Yeah,
like all of my
backpack.
stuff was just there in a worship service. And your dad called me out.
Wow.
And
What
it
did that
was-
look like with him calling you out?
So he sat me down in the old front room.
Okay.
And of their house, and I just remember him looking at me saying, "It doesn't matter what you're going through; it has to stay at the door because he is worthy to be worshipped."
Wow.
And I didn't see that in you today.
Yeah.
And you're a leader here in this church. And I just remember I had a moment.
Oh
Okay. I had a moment where I remember very specifically I had to choose. So I got in Nicole's little white Honda, old school. And I drove up to a lookout point on the dam. And I remember just sitting there crying. And I remember thinking, I have a choice to make. I'm either going to listen to him and follow, or I'm going to choose to be offended.
Yeah.
And I just remember sitting there saying, okay, Jesus, I don't want to be offended.
Yeah.
I want to take what he's giving me
Yeah.
and I want to change.
That's
'Cause
good.
I don't want to stay the same.
That's so good.
And so I made the choice. I said, okay, I will follow Steve.
Yeah.
And I remember that was the moment that just changed for me, where it was like I could allow him
Wow.
to be that father in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So talking to both of you both had good parents. And so there's this tension sometime, like if I have to have a spiritual dad, then that means the role of my actual parents goes away. And that's not the case at all. That's not what it's about. So Derek, talk about that. Talk about how being a spiritual son to somebody has really changed your life, and the dramatic change in you from that year of living with my parents.
Yeah. So it was, that's the thing. I think somebody gets to the point where they feel they have to, well, I can't listen to my parents anymore. It's like, and I had incredible parents that did everything and anything for me. It was like, so, but we didn't grow up going to church, so I didn't really have a ton of education in that.
Right.
And so, throughout my process of Christianity, I did get mentors along the way that really helped me from the spiritual sides of things. I didn't need help from the parenting side of things because my dad and mom were there to answer those questions and help me through those things. So for me, it was the spiritual growth side of stuff. Like, who do I go to? And I had several mentors. And the good thing is when I did meet her dad, Steve, it was a point where I was able to see that he was further along in areas that I needed help with. Yeah. And so I had to ask for help in a lot of areas that I needed that in. And I think we see that, like Jesus you can see the fact that it's highlighted because Jesus would put honor and respect around his earthly father within that.
Yeah.
Yet there was such a pursuit of his true biological God the Father.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think there needs to be an understanding of what those things are, so there is that incredible adoration and respect for your own parents.
Yeah.
Yet still being able to recognize, well, I could use some help in this. And so that's where a spiritual father can start coming along to help, assist in those areas. So Steve provided a lot of that for me when I did come here.
Yeah. So there's something we talk about all the time at the Father's house is really discipleship mirrors sonship so much. Like if you want to be a true disciple of Jesus, you have to understand what it means to be a son. And Jesus talks all the time, but he tells specific stories about, the son in the vineyard and the worker, and we're called to be the sons. And in Hebrews, it basically says, if you're not sons of God, you miss it completely, right? He hasn't called you to be orphans again. He hasn't called you to be servants again and slaves. He's called you into sonship. And so what are some of the attributes of sonship that you guys have seen? I'll start with you, Lisa. That have really changed and helped your life?
Yeah, I think one of the things is being willing to lay down your hurts, your perceived ideas of what a father should look like, and what a daughter should look like. Because we may have it wrong. I had it wrong. So for me, it was like really laying that down and being somebody that would be willing to be wrong in that and to learn then how to be right in that. And that my pursuit of Steve as my spiritual father is one of the main key things of being the daughter. It's not just sitting around waiting for him to come find me. It's me going to find him.
That's good.
And so for me, it's just being willing. That was my main thing, I think, is just I had to be willing. I had to get past myself and to get past my idea of what it should look like. And really go after him and what it actually looks like. And so I think that's one of the main things for me as an attribute, just being willing.
Good. What about you, Derek?
I would say trust. Allowing the trust of the fruit, the trust of what you've seen. There's a lot of things that I tell my own kids and they're not doubting that because they just know that I know.
Right.
And they have a trust and understanding that Dad cares for me. It's like, and so my dad had that where there were several things that I'll ask his advice on, or did ask his advice on, or asked questions in the past, and there was no argument. It just considered what he said was complete, utter gospel truth. And I think sometimes that gets in the way with some of the spiritual sides of things. With people will ask a question, and then it's like, oh, I don't know about that. And it's kind of like, so we got to get to the point where we are seeing the fruit of that person's life.
Absolutely.
That's why we went to them to ask for their help. So then we need to trust that
That's good.
that bond and that advice.
Sometimes as believers, we think, we're just supposed to follow somebody so that they can correct us so that I can be better. But the point of following others isn't so that we can follow others. The point of following others in our faith is so that they can push us on and teach us how to follow God. Like that is the goal, full stop. The goal, full stop, is that I follow someone my whole life to follow them while they follow Jesus. It's so that they can teach me to follow Jesus and have my own 2 feet, grow my own 2 feet and my own relationship with God, learning to hear his voice and take me along this journey because we don't just pop out as born again Christians as adults. You know what I mean?
We have to go through the process.
We have to go through the process. We're babies, then we're toddlers. And babies and toddlers and adolescents need help. They need guidance. They need to be, behavior modification, as we like to call it. We both have toddlers right now.
And a newborn.
And a newborn.
There we go. Yeah.
So the goal, it's so important. It can't be stressed. If you cannot follow other people, then it's very, very probable that you're not following God. Because if you can't follow a person you can see, how could you follow a God that you can't see?
And this is something we have to continue to understand is everybody's following somebody.
Yeah, that's right.
So every single person out in the world doing a job is following somebody. And we're all following something. I mean, you can see that more than ever through this coronavirus thing.
Yeah.
Everybody's following somebody, whether it's the government, whether it's our local government, whether it's our federal government, whether, you know what I mean, whether
Somebody
it's
on
our
TV.
mayors, whether whatever it may be. So it's like, this shouldn't be a concept that's mind-blowing to us. We're all following somebody.
Yeah, we all follow traffic laws, or we'd all be in big trouble.
And so we have to get to a place where we're understanding that we need to apply to our Christianity more than anything else.
I think one of the things that we're seeing right now in this generation, a lot of times though, is that you hop from person to person by opinion or by they didn't say something that I quite liked, so I'm not going to follow them in that, but I'll survey take a little bit and I'll ask so and so here and so there, and it's not that that's 100% bad, but it's just that if you're going to follow a spiritual parent, then you should, like Derek said, look at the fruit of their life and then go after it, and not have maybe 20 spiritual parents where you're getting different answers on different things and then you get to pick.
Well, you people are smart. They go to people that would agree with them.
Well, exactly. Yes. And if they find somebody that doesn't, we're going to go next.
Yeah, we don't have the same same view values.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's not spiritual sonship or being a spiritual daughter. That is you leading the way in independence, pretending to be a spiritual son or daughter. Being a spiritual son or daughter is following when it hurts and when you don't understand. And here's the deal. God credits to you as righteousness for that. Like your dedication in following, your dedication in serving God and serving the leaders He's placed in your life will be credited to you. God is very, very consistent with that, you know? And so, you know, guys, I think you said it about following. You're following somebody, but the truth is really following is God's design for learning, right? We have little DJ. He's 16 months, and he literally is everything he is learning is based on following us and following his sisters and what he sees. And so imitation. That's God's design for learning and so it's so important, like I said, when you are a spiritual baby or a spiritual toddler, adolescent, to learn what it means to be a Christian. I mean, Derek, you just learned concrete. Did you learn that by yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you?
No.
So why don't you tell people about you learning to do concrete and how that all panned out?
You learn from somebody telling you what to do. And you learn from mimicking.
Just somebody? So can you learn from just like me teaching you how to do concrete?
There you go. So you learn from somebody who's been doing it for a very long time.
He's not irritated at all with that question.
For me though, like another thing that I do want to highlight in that, it's like what I learn most from or have in the past is a lot of my failures. And so, coming from kind of an athletic background, you learn from failing a lot. And so, I mean, that should be to a point now where stuff like this is, we should be taking people's advice on what doesn't work. So it's like there were several times my father would tell me stories of, hey, this is why I didn't do this and I wouldn't do that if I were you either. And there was just times where I was like, you know what, I think I'll just take your word on that and choose to not find out if that is going to fail or not. And I think we need to be doing that in those things as well. I mean, so you bringing up just learning a trade or, like you bring up concrete, it's like, well, I found somebody that's been doing concrete for almost 20 years. And so I don't sit here and question what he's telling me. I just do what he's telling me. And so that's the same thing with any mentor or what my kids should be doing with me as their father, just like I do with my own father.
So I'm gonna flip it a little bit. So you guys, both of you really credit Steve a lot with fathering you.
Absolutely.
It's easier for me because he's my actual dad. There's other people that I've chosen, Jordy, my husband, to also follow in that way. But now you guys are leading a bunch of other people. I know you have a lot of women that you disciple. You have a ton of men that you disciple. How have you taken what you've learned? Because you guys are farther down the road now. You're not baby Christians. You're not adolescent Christians. I mean, you are well on the way in this. Derek, you've been a Christian for 17 years? 18 years. And Lisa?
Well, since I was young, but realistically...
20-something?
Right?
Okay.
We'll go with that.
Well, why don't you figure that out later? How are you applying the principles when you learn to follow someone else? Now, how are you doing that to the people behind you?
It really comes from experience. So I've experienced Steve's wisdom and sometimes his correction. And you then learn how to do that as well. And so it's a lot of making the path straight for them, and not in a controlling way, but in a really good leadership way of saying it's It's almost like being a shepherd with a rod and some sheep, right? It's like you're going to stay inside this lane, you know? And I'm here to help you make sure that you stay inside.
And there's so much safety in that.
There is, and there really is, but it's learning how that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And so it's really teaching them that these things that I'm implementing with them or talking to them about or challenging them on, that it is actually a really good thing.
Yeah.
It's nothing to be afraid of. It's not to be, completely down on yourself about, but it's taking the experience and learning from it and learning from your failures.
Exactly.
And so it's
so
really
good.
walking that out.
So good. And Derek, you are such a good spiritual father to so many guys. And I mean, you're only 30 something years old.
35.
35. Okay. I didn't want to say it. That's why I pretended not to know.
You got it.
Because he doesn't like what I say.
Anyway.
Moving on.
Moving forward.
Anyways, 35 years old, and you are like spiritually fathering so many men, and you do such a good job, like an amazing job. Yeah. It's incredible. And so, will you give us the rundown? We only have a couple minutes left, but of spiritual fathering for you and what that looks like, because you do such a good job.
I mean, so a lot of it was, Jesus talks a lot about kind of fruit evaluation.
Yeah.
And so that's one of Steve's big things is, I don't take my word for it, evaluate my life, you know what I mean? So I like to take the right process towards that, and it's like, I like you to get to a point where you're evaluating my fruit. I shouldn't have to sit here and defend myself of what I'm doing in my life.
Or prove through words.
Yeah, exactly. My life should speak for itself. My kids should speak for itself. My wife and my marriage.
My relationship with Jesus.
My relationship with Jesus. All of that. So everything that you see here and everything that you see at my house and all of that stuff should line up. So, and it should get to a point where you as a man or as a person or whatever following somebody is you're able to evaluate fruit.
And you
need
welcome
to know
that.
how to. Very much so.
You welcome people to look at your life. You're not trying to hide anything.
No,
so good.
And you guys have to get to a point where you can evaluate fruit. That is part of keeping yourself safe and picking the right people to follow and picking the right people to put your life in their hands. And so that's the challenge that I put towards the men that are following me. And I place an expectation on them of, hey, you need to study my life. You need to look at the fruit in it and decide if that's something that you want. And then if you do, then we shouldn't have to spend any back and forth time on me convincing you to follow what I'm telling you to do. Right. So.
And I think if you do that, you'll get the results that you want. I mean, my husband has followed you for 7 years, and he has what he has in his life because of you, because of the example that you've laid before him, because of the men that you've followed and submitted to, and he has what he has. I mean, we're married. We just had our second baby. Yeah. Like, his life is incredible, and he'll boast about it. Yeah. And it's just because he's learned how to follow.
Yeah.
And something you do, Derek, you don't just ask people to inspect your fruit. I mean, you're day in and day out with people. You are listening to their stories. You are calling them out. I know one time Jacob was, it was when he first got here, and you and a couple guys surrounded him and said, this is not who you are. And you spoke identity into him. Yeah. And you really stepped in because we know his father left and eventually passed away. And you were that guy for him saying, no, I'm going to tell you who you are. I'm going to protect you and not let you, by not letting you act like this. And being that strong male figure in his life. I mean, I saw that save his life that day. And it was so needed. And so many men have risen to the occasion because you're willing to have a hard word. Yeah. But the beauty about you is you're not just willing to have a hard word, you're willing to tell them who they are, and you're willing to listen to them. I've seen guys cry on your shoulder, and it's just been truly spectacular. Yeah.
It's special, and like the thing that I think that's really cool about it is like what an honor it is to hear that, and like the credit that you give me for Johnny. But it's like the greatest thing is all you're doing is providing them an opportunity to make a choice. Yeah. And then it's like he made a choice and has been for 7 years, and all he didn't reap my fruit. He reaped his fruit. Yeah. And that's the cool thing is it builds such a momentum for him where it's like, well, now he's just recreated himself. So now he's somebody that can say, hey, why don't you inspect my fruit real quick and come follow me? Yeah.
That's what I love about this church is the spiritual sonship. Yeah. My dad, Steve, really talked about that on Wednesday, like we said, and how the Lord called him out on that. I think it was in the 2000s, early 2000s, about how that was his strength. And so he just started fathering kids, fathering, young adults. And now we're singing third and fourth generation from that, fruit from him fathering Derek. Now Derek fathering Johnny. Then now Johnny's fathering people. And it's this beautiful thing where you're raising up people to spiritually raise other people. It's not stagnant. It's not everybody waiting on the pastor to be their father. I mean, although he should be, but it's like
Yeah.
it starts to branch out and affect everybody,
really good.
and it's this incredible raising and reaping the fruit.
Well, and that's the thing that we really have to focus on is it's like, what did Jesus do? What was his plan?
WWJD.
He sent people out to go make disciples, to replace himself.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be doing. We
good,
should never
Derek.
be getting ourselves to a place where we're not replaceable.
Boom.
So we have to get to a place where we are expendable because we have replaced that. And so it's
good.
like,
That's good.
I love that Johnny still comes to me and asks my advice and does those things. But does Johnny ask me the same questions that he did 4 or 5 years ago? Not even close. We don't even talk about that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like there has to be a progression now to the point where it's like, Johnny can completely function on his own.
That's so
It's
good.
just such a privilege to get to a place where we get to sit and join together and talk. So
So
that's
good.
what your mentor should be doing for you.
So good. We're going to mic drop and leave it on that. Jesus discipled the disciples, who discipled the disciples, who discipled the disciples. Be someone who is being discipled, who has a spiritual father. That doesn't mean your real father and mother can't, be who they're supposed to be in your life, or they can't even help you spiritually. It's just having someone in your life that you're following. You will see incredible fruit from it. These two amazing individuals. Thank you for being with me, Derek and Lisa, for being so candid. Tomorrow, join us. We are having church tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
10 o'clock. We have an amazing worship team, and Steve will be bringing the word. I hope you guys have a great night. Enjoy your Saturday, and we'll see you later.